So my name is Marvin, and I've been in online business for the past 5 years. I've actually been in it longer if you want to count like when I was growing up, my father used to sell on Craigslist. But the reason why I'm making this video is because I've made over $4 million for my clients in online business, and I wanted to make this video to really just shed some light on how simple online business actually is. And I think this actually, spreads into business in general. I would go as far as to say that this is going to help you understand business not only in the online space but also in the in-person space. And I'm going to give two examples in this video going over exactly how online business and business in general operates so you can get a really good understanding of how simple it is. Not just some crazy kraken of a beast that you can't really understand. It's actually a lot simpler than what you've been taught and what you've been learning. And this is going to basically give you some principles of what to keep in mind if you start an online business, if you start some type of offer yourself, whether it's a coaching offer, an e-commerce brand, or any type of like, maybe it's like a private equity firm, anything like that. Now, I'm not saying that I've started some type of like private equity firm or anything like that, but what I am saying is this video will give you the fundamentals of how to look at business so you can basically start one yourself and essentially see some success with it as well. All right, so this is the overview. Every business runs on four different principles. You have an offer, traffic, sales, and fulfillment. Now, all it really is you getting interested people in, converting these people, and delivering the result for those people. So essentially, this will serve as a way to kind of just give you an idea of how pretty much every single business operates. And it's oftentimes very overcomplicated, unfortunately, but it's really just the same exact principles. So the first thing that we need to understand is offer. Before anybody starts any type of business, they're asking themselves, okay, what am I actually going to offer these people? What am I actually going to deliver for these people? And before you can actually, start the business, you need to actually understand what you're actually going to offer. Whether you're an e-commerce brand, a software company, a coaching company, or just even a fund manager, somebody who runs a fund, like for example, a real estate firm, or even private equity firms where they're essentially buying businesses, fixing them up, and essentially flipping a business. So, what is an actual offer? An offer is basically what are you actually going to offer to your customers? It's pretty self-explanatory. What am I actually going to deliver for my actual target market? And how you essentially identify what you're going to offer is you need to ask yourself, who is my ideal customer slash client? What do they actually need? What do they struggle with? What are their problems? And what do they look like? How do they actually behave? Who are my competitors? You want to ask these questions so you actually understand who you're going to be targeting in your whole entire business. So the reason why I included who are my competitors is because a lot of businesses are just modeled after other businesses. So for example, if there is a supplement company, let's just assume that there's a supplement company, and this supplement company is the only supplement company on the market. Like it's the only supplement company in existence. That supplement company is going to do really, really well because they hold all the market share. But if you are a aspiring entrepreneur, you can look at that supplement company, that the only one in existence, and be like, okay, how can I improve on this one supplement company? How can I actually improve on what they're offering and launch my own supplement company? Now, obviously, you're going to have the benefit of the doubt of just like being the second supplement company in existence. That's also going to help you out. But essentially, what you're going to be doing is you're going to be taking the market share from your competitors, essentially, by simply improving on what they have already working. Now, this is literally like what every single company is kind of just based on. If you look at every single, clothing company, they're basically just modeling it after somebody who's done it more at a larger scale. And now you have all these people launching their own clothing brands. It's the same thing for, the hair salon company that launched right across where you live, the same exact strategy that barbershops are using um, to launch their own barbershops. They're looking at what other competitors are doing and seeing how they can improve themselves. So once you have, kind of like an idea of who you're going to actually offer this to, what you're actually going to deliver in terms of like, are you going to actually launch a hair salon? Are you going to launch a software? Are you going to launch an e-commerce brand, clothing brand, whatever it is, a supplement company? You'll be able to actually understand what the messaging should actually be. So like, how am I going to actually communicate with these people? What are their struggles? What are their problems? Who are my competitors? So I can basically improve on what they're already offering to my target actual customers and clients. And you're going to create an offer around this. This is the fundamentals of every single business. Your offer right here. You need to nail this, in order to actually have a really, really good business. So the next step, this is the first principle, offer. The next one would be traffic. Now, I'm going to actually share some examples of how, every single, like, pretty much every single business operates. And it's all you're going to notice a pattern on how they actually share, the same exact, pattern of operations. And it's going to make sense. Just keep watching. So here's an example of a barber. Now, the barber has a shop right here, and as you can see, there's people standing outside, and there's probably people walking by. This is the essential source of where the traffic is headed to. These people who are walking by will see this. this shop right here, the barbershop right here, and that's the source of traffic. That is how this barbershop gets traffic. Now, once they actually enter the barbershop, you enter the sales pattern, the sales actual stage. This is where they walk in. Let's just assume we're inside right now. We'll start to really understand kind of like what they actually are delivering. We could probably imagine like a menu here. We could imagine like other people actually sitting here, and that's actually I have a picture right here. You walk in and you see all these different elements. All these different elements, including menus, chairs, designs, lights, all these different things are examples of sales mechanisms. So essentially, people are walking in here and they're literally being sold on what you have to actually offer. Now, you're going to start to see this develop as we go on to give more examples, but I'm sharing this to show you that you've created an offer as a barber. You have your shop right here where you're going to drive traffic to. The components within the actual barbershop are what sells these people, and obviously this is all going to tie in together. And then you have the actual delivery where people are actually getting their haircut. All these different things play a part in the process. Another example, you have a e-commerce store offer. They create an offer. In this case, it is some type of energy beverage or bars. This is literally the equivalent of a barbershop. They just have an online store. This is a physical store. It's a barbershop. This is an online shop. What they're doing is they're driving traffic here, and let's just assume it's the same exact mechanism as this right here. These people are walking by. In this case, these people are just shopping online for like energy bars or whatever. They come across this store right here. They click into the store. In this case, let's just assume they're clicking on one of the products here. They're clicking into the product, and what they're doing is they're now on the sales stage, the sales mechanism. So this in this case for e-commerce, it's literally a store. It's literally a shop where there's like a 25% off over here. There's nutrition facts, all these different features of the products, the benefits, all the different things that play a part in selling this product. This is literally the equivalent of this stage right here, where the components are literally just menu, chair. Maybe you have like different options on the side right here, as well as people sharing what they think about it and stuff like this. This is literally no different from this right here. So when people are actually on this page, this is when they get sold, and then the deliveries in this case would be not getting your haircut, but essentially delivering the actual physical product. So again, traffic, sales mechanism, and then the actual fulfillment of the thing they're getting. Their offer is I'm gonna cut your hair. They go through this process, the sales process, and then they actually get the actual haircut. Same thing here. They're looking for energy bars. They go to this site right here, sales page right here. They get sold and they get delivered um, the actual product. And now this actually gets really technical, but it still is the same exact pattern. In this case, I brought up a real estate equity firm, and as well as syndications as well. So syndications or fund managers in this case. So if you're a fund manager, we hear this complex like hedge funds and fund managers, private equity. It's all really the same thing because we're all just talking about the operations of business right now. You have an offer to a deal. So let's just say you're a real estate firm, real estate fund manager, a fund firm. You find a deal, like a really good real estate deal, and what you're now since you found that deal, what you're going to do is you're going to go to really wealthy person or some people who actually have money, and you're going to say, hey, look, I have this crazy deal. We're going to do this deal, and I just wanted to basically ask and request. I'm going to request money from this wealthy person, and this is where you have like an in-person sales meeting, and you're going to basically pitch this deal, get the investment, and then you're going to deliver on that investment by essentially carrying out that real estate deal, and then essentially delivering a return for your investors. So how this looks, and what I just described as syndication, where essentially you are getting funds, you're getting money from wealthy people, and you're carrying out the deal. How this looks in practice for a fund manager when this evolves into a fund, you're essentially you basically have a track record of a bunch of real estate deals, right? So you've done a lot of real estate deals. You go ahead to this stage right here where you have a fund where you have all these people contributing to this fund, and that's going to allow you to basically contribute to carrying out real estate deals, and then obviously you get a return right here. So just to put it into simple terms, you have an offer, which is your real estate fund or your syndication um, model. You have traffic. You have to get traffic to this actual this initial like offer. So you basically found a really good real estate deal. You want to get traffic to this deal. Once you actually get that traffic, you have a sales meeting with that person or with those people, and then you're going to go ahead and once you actually get that sale, when they actually give you investing money, you'll go ahead and deliver on that. So in this case, this would be instead of delivering a product right here, you're essentially delivering the return for your investors. So traffic to this offer, real estate firm or a syndication firm, you close them, you get your investment, you get your funds, and then you go ahead and grant them a return on the money they actually invested. See, it's very, very similar to literally a barbershop. We're talking about fund managers versus barbershops here. It's really, really similar. And here's another, like my last example. The very software that I'm using right now, Miro, has an offer, and they're going to get traffic to this offer, and then they're going to convert those interested prospects with some type of sales mechanism. Now, the sales mechanism for Miro, if you're not aware, is essentially they will get you into a freemium plan where essentially you are able to use their software. You're driving traffic to this offer where essentially they're able to use the software for free, and then after some time you're like, man, I've been using Miro for like 3 months now. I'm going to go ahead and buy their extended version because like obviously you can only get 3 of 3 editable boards used. So this is actually a case study for me. After a while, I went ahead and purchased Miro because I've just used it for so much time. And then obviously once I got it, the delivery is right here, where essentially you're able to actually get the full experience of Miro. So it's traffic, sales mechanism, and then you have the actual delivery of the actual thing. In this case, software. So we went through 4 different businesses that basically use the same pattern of operations. You have an offer, you drive traffic to the offer, that traffic gets sold through a sales mechanism, and then it's delivered, the actual thing that they're offering. Traffic, convert on the product page, sales page, deliver the product. Traffic, convert, deliver the actual return in this case. Traffic, convert, and then deliver the actual service. So the question here is how can I actually get interested traffic? Because we have like this first step, this first step, this first step, this first step. How do we actually get interested traffic? Well, there's a couple ways you can actually do that. Organic, so you have organic traffic, you have paid ads, network/partnering, and outreach. Now, organic is essentially what we talked about with the barbershop, where people are literally walking by or searching for energy bars, or maybe like in this case, you are just somebody who's just online and people are searching for like maybe real estate deals, or somebody's just searching for like a design board. These are just people who are just searching around and they're just walking by. That's an example of organic. And how you essentially can use organic to like, higher at a higher level is through content. So essentially when you go on to Instagram, you can post reels and content about your barbershop. You can post content about your e-commerce brand. You can post content about the different deals you're finding. And that's a way where you can get traffic into your actual sales mechanism. That's really where you're going to make the money right here. So essentially that's one of the ways you can get traffic, and it's probably the cheapest because like obviously you don't really have to do much. You're just essentially posting content. Paid ads is when you're essentially buying traffic from sources like Facebook, Google, TikTok. These sources, they'll allow you to basically pay. If you've heard of Meta ads, Facebook ads, Google ads, all these different ways are ways to essentially drive traffic to your barbershop, to your e-commerce brand, to your firm or software company. Then you have network/partnering. This is where like if you have a network, you could just basically just go to them, and or the mail will come to you. Then you have outreach to prospects. So basically doing outreach. So like actually going out and pitching people. Hey, look, you should come to our barbershop. Hey, look, you should come to our e-commerce brand. Hey, look, we have real estate deals that you'd be interested in. Hey, come to Miro. You're essentially reaching out directly to these people. And obviously, if you know exactly who your ICP is, your ideal customer profile, then that's going to be very easy to find. Then you have, how do I actually convert this interested traffic? So this is the middle section. This is where, how do I actually make sure that the people who actually walk into my store, the traffic that actually comes to my e-commerce brand, how do these people actually, get converted? So you can essentially do this. So how this essentially looks, and I'm going to expand on this more, excuse me. How this essentially looks first is you have an online sales page if you're an e-commerce brand. So this is like the sales mechanism for an e-commerce brand. It's a online sales page. Or you have an in-store layout with offers. So this is a barbershop company. So basically, you just have like in-store offers where they walk in and they're sold on kind of things that are going on within the shop. You have a checkout page, if you're also an e-commerce brand, or if you have a coaching offer, or if you have a software company where essentially you have a checkout page or sales page like this. You have a direct to calendar booking, especially if you have a coaching offer. Essentially, people will come to your sales page and then they'll essentially get sold on that, and then they'll go ahead and book a call, and then they'll basically close on that call. That's another way to essentially convert interested traffic. Then you have in-person sales presentation, so essentially something that's similar to a real estate fund, where essentially they are basically just most likely probably going in person, or just maybe on Zoom, and they're essentially going to wire a check, or basically just wire or do it through a check. And then essentially you have the delivery of the actual thing you're offering. So basically, you'd ship the product, like for example, this, you'd ship this out to the actual customer. You could deliver the service, which is basically getting your haircut or getting a return on your investment. Yeah, deliver the returns and deliver the service. Another example that would be like the service here would be like this actual software. So these are basically these are just drastically different businesses that have the same pattern of operations. Now, how do I actually grow more? So like this is an example. This is just a bonus section that I included here, where essentially if you wanted to grow more, since you now understand this whole entire process, okay, if I have a e-commerce brand, I know I have to get traffic to this page right here, and then they'll go ahead and click through to my sales page, and it'll go ahead and purchase, and I'll go ahead and just deliver the product. Okay, I understand that, but how do I actually go ahead and grow more? Well, there's a couple ways to go through this, and I'm not going to go too deep into it, but essentially you'd have more traffic. So essentially, if you're spending a lot on ads, you'd essentially spend more on ads. If you are doing a lot more, if you're doing content, you do a lot more content. You'd optimize your system. So, for example, AI is pretty big right now. If you have a way to essentially use artificial intelligence to essentially make your systems more efficient, then you're going to do a lot better than before if you didn't have those systems. Then you have more better staff. So basically, hiring more people and hiring better people, and then retargeting slash retention. So basically, retargeting people who were interested but they didn't actually purchase, or people who are, they gave you some piece of information that you can use to reach out to them, and you're able to use that information to essentially, retain them further. So, for example, email marketing is one of the things that you would use in this case, where if somebody purchased from you, you want to essentially increase their LTV, their lifetime value, by essentially upselling them with other different products or even the same product. Then you have horizontally. So basically, just within the actual organization, within your actual offer stack, you'd essentially be able to implement like upsells and downsells. So an example of this would be like maybe something like this right here, where if you are on the 8-month plan, you'd essentially be able to maybe explore the business plan or the enterprise plan. That's an example of an upsell. Downsells will be the opposite of that. So essentially lower priced items that are lower than what you're actually paying for. Tiered pricing. So basically prices that start out with at like one price point and then they essentially go up higher and higher based on like maybe different features or maybe use cases that you're basically signed up with. And then you have revenue share. So for example this would be like if you have for example, let's just say you are a software company and you charge like 0.6% of the actual revenue that comes through. That is an example of how software companies like that, for example, like a Shopify app, would make money because they're basically getting a revenue share based on how many orders come in, how much revenue comes in. And that's actually really, really powerful. New features plus offers, so implementing more of those features and constant customer communication and improvement. So essentially, you want to keep in contact with the actual customers, and that is essentially how you know pretty much every single business operates. So here's how you could practically use this within your business, because we already covered every business runs on 4 principles: offer, traffic, sales, and fulfillment. You get interested people in, you convert them, and you deliver the actual result. So the first of these is offer dash traffic. So how this looks, right, is you have the goal of getting qualified attention on your offer. These are people you've done research on. You know that this is what they want. You know that this is what they need. You know their problems. You know their struggles. How do we actually go ahead and go about this? So that's basically this right here. Define your ideal customer and core offer. You're going to pick 1 to 2 channels. So whether that's ads, probably not ideal if you're a beginner. Content, which is basically posting on Instagram, posting on TikTok, posting online about what you have to offer. Outbound, basically reaching out to people, and partnerships slash network, basically leveraging people who would already be interested in what you have to offer. You want to set daily traffic targets. So basically, you want to keep track of these things. You want to keep track of how many people are actually seeing your offer, maybe actually, opting into your offer if you have some type of opt-in section. You just want to be very, very meticulous with how much traffic is actually coming to your offers. Publish, spend, outreach every single day. So essentially, you want to keep injecting fuel into your actual offer. This is probably the most important thing because, like, the whole entire, what we talked about here, the whole entire life of the business starts really with the traffic. If you have zero traffic all of a sudden, then nobody's going to actually get to this stage right here. Nobody's actually going to sit down in the chairs. Nobody's going to actually go to the product page slash checkout page. Nobody's actually meet up with you to have a meeting, and nobody's going to want to explore any type of like offers that you have on this section. So you need to always be injecting life into the actual business via constantly doing outreach or constantly spending money on ads, obviously profitably. That's a whole different other topic, and publishing content as well. You don't have to do all of them. It's just that you pick one when you're first starting out. Like, for example, outreach is probably the easiest one. and then you just stick to that until you actually have enough to spend money on ads. And in the middle of that, you can also be posting content as you're doing outreach as well. You're going to send traffic to one clear action. So essentially, that traffic is going to be you're going to be using a call to action to essentially direct these people. So essentially, honestly, a call to action for a barber shop would probably be like, come inside. We have maybe like, I don't know, maybe like a buy one get one offer for a barbershop or something that basically attracts these people into the actual barbershop. But essentially, a call to action is can be as simple as, we're open, come inside. A call to action here would be shop now. A call to action would right here would be like, let's book a call together or book a meeting. And a call to action here would just be like, try our free plan. So there's different ways you just direct traffic to the sales mechanism because they need to be directed. Like oftentimes we call other people sheep, but we fail to realize that we're actually sheep ourselves, and we have to be like directed. And that applies to every single person in the world. Like we are constantly being directed to a specific product or service that we essentially use every single day. So you want to look at that the same way when you're actually directing these interested prospects to your actual sales mechanism. KPIs would be count visitors, so basically tracking people who actually come to your actual page. Track cost per click slash lead, track lead quality if you can, book calls, cards started, applications, stuff like that. Once they actually get to the second phase, the middle phase right here, we are entering the sales phase. We'd essentially get to some more technical stuff. So we want to turn this traffic into revenue. Now, the first thing I would do is like I'd qualify the actual leads. So essentially, this is mainly if you have a coaching offer, this is like non-negotiable. But if you can, you want to qualify the leads because it's going to basically allow you to get more data on who's actually seeing your offers. So you want to be taking a look at offer fit. So it's basically seeing if these people are actually like bought into your offer, or at least somewhat bought into your offer, their needs, their expectations, their budget of what they can actually afford. That's going to help a lot with how you structure things. As you get more data, you're essentially going to keep a look at these things. Sales mechanism. This essentially reiterates on the offer, addressing the customer's problems, offer value, unique offer propositions, price slash options, expectations, and dream outcome. This is essentially what this is. And I like using this barber analogy because it's the most basic thing that anybody can understand. This can be a nail salon, this could be a massage place, a spa, a barbershop, whatever it is. This, when you walk into a barbershop right here, that's literally what you're basically being immersed in. You know that the problem that you have right now is like, oh, I need a haircut like right now. The offer value could literally just be a menu, basically showing the different price points you have things, price that different, like maybe like upsells and stuff like that. And you might actually have like maybe like a section where people can actually purchase like, smaller items like on the side or something like that. These are all things that take place at the sales level, the sales mechanism. And the expectation obviously in that case would be like, I expect to get a haircut. And my dream outcome is literally every single person sitting right here. This is the dream outcome. You see a bunch of people getting their haircut. That is exactly what you want when you walk into a barbershop. And that is what we're trying to convey here. So on an e-commerce level, we're essentially seeing that as like, maybe testimonials. We're seeing that as products being delivered like literally right here in real time. These are all ways, in this section right here of actually converting, traffic into revenue. So it's all really the same thing. Then you have for calls slash in person. So essentially when you are meeting with your prospect to actually convert them, sell them into your offer, either your closer or yourself addresses these things. So, for example, what we just covered is like a barbershop and an e-com store. In the case of a fund manager, you won't before you actually even sign the deal, you have to essentially convince them of the different outcomes of this whole entire deal. You break down the numbers, you break down the timelines, you break down everything that the person needs to actually be sold into this actual deal that you're doing with them. So essentially, this all gets addressed in the sales mechanism stage. So next thing, track objections. So essentially, whenever somebody gives you an objection, you want to keep an eye out for these common objections, frequently asked questions, because this is all just data that you're going to basically use to optimize your offer further, so it's more smooth and the sales process is a lot smoother and not as bumpy. It's always going to be bumpy in the beginning stages, but eventually it gets easier as you understand more about your actual customer. Your offer needs to be presented here or people will be thrown off. So essentially, this is where everything comes together. You need to have your offer, traffic, and sales in alignment as you get more data, because that's going to basically help with selling to these people. It's going to help so much as you actually grow the actual business, because you know exactly who you're selling to. Going back to the actual first right here, you know what they struggle with, you know what the problems they have, you know what they look like, you know how they behave, whether they sit down when they pee and stuff like that. You know exactly how these people behave, and that's going to allow you to basically have such a smoother sales process. So the systems here would be like a landing page, storefront, a funnel, landing page, something like, maybe like a storefront right here, something like that right there. Like, for example, walk into the actual place. These are all different ways to actually, conduct this whole entire sales process right here. You have a calendar section. Let's just say you are booking these people in for a call, or maybe you're going to meet them in person. This is essentially where the actual sales conclusion is actually going to conclude. Tracking and weekly reports, essentially, if this is something that applies to you, actually it does apply to you, because you should be tracking everything. Even if you are a barber, even if you are a nail salon, even if you are a fund manager, you want to track your every single time you get into a meeting with these people. And if you can, as a barbershop, I know it might sound tedious, but the more data you get on your customers, the more you're actually going to outcompete everybody else and grow a lot faster, because you know exactly who your demographic is. Then you have CRM with stages. CRM is just basically a customer representative manager. So essentially, it's going to basically allow you to track different things like, you get a new lead, they apply, maybe they apply, but they don't actually book. Maybe they do book, you get the meeting. Was that person qualified on the meeting? And then you go ahead and propose something in the second call, or maybe in the first call as well. And then you check off whether you won the deal or you lost the deal. Ongoing emails, proposals, session offers. These are basically ways to basically make sure that these people are staying in the loop. If they haven't purchased already, you want to make sure that you're sending them different offers that they can actually look at, getting into contact with them again. You don't want to lose contact with a potential interested prospect. Then you have follow-up reminders that's just tied to this right here. And then the easy part, well, actually, here's some just KPIs. Show rates. So basically, how many people are showing up to your barbershops? How many people are actually showing up to your meetings, your e-commerce webpage, your product pages, all these different things you want to keep track of. That would be like an example of a show rate. But this is mainly just for like show rates, and close rates are usually just for like booking calls and in-person meetings and stuff like that. Sales cycle length. This applies to you, I would say, regardless, because like it just shows that how long it takes somebody to actually make a purchase. That's really, really important. Average order value. So basically, on average, how much are these people actually spending on your products? And then lifetime value is essentially how long the customer actually stays with you. For example, if you have like one offer, you're probably gonna have a much smaller lifetime value, because it's only one thing they can actually purchase. But if you have more than one offer, if you have like three offers, you might actually be able to significantly increase your lifetime value, because there's just more stuff you're being able to offer to one person. So it's just a way of increasing lifetime value. So the easiest part in my opinion is probably fulfillment, because if you have an offer, then you probably most likely know how to deliver on the offer. So it's essentially you just doing what you promised. You want to deliver the offer as soon as possible. So whether you're selling a physical product, haircuts, software, um, a real estate deal, you want to deliver this as soon as possible, and you want to do this with post-purchase messaging. This is extremely, extremely important. You're essentially dealing with humans, and human psychology is always like, after they make a purchase, there's going to be some type of like thing that's triggering in their mind. It's like, should I have made this purchase? Like, should I just save my money? You want to address that immediately. And how you essentially can do that is by thanking them, confirming the actual thing they just purchased, confirm the scope, the timeline, delivery and results. So essentially, how long will this product take to be delivered? What results can I expect? What success metrics have we seen, and what we should share with these people? Use a repeatable delivery checklist. So essentially, non-negotiables. Every single customer that buys from you, every single you know investor that basically meets with you, every single client that you meet with, what do they actually need as soon as they actually make a purchase? Then you have provide frequent updates. I don't know why I wrote it like that, but essentially you want to basically keep on contact with these people, make sure that they're actually satisfied and they're actually what they have right expectations. Share progress and blockers, track feedback, always request a testimonial at completion. This is extremely important. It's going to help with selling as well, because you're going to just accrue a bunch of different testimonials that are basically going to help pre-sell a lot of people into your offers. Then you have project board with stages. So essentially, you'd basically be, these are just optional things you could keep track of. This is not optional. You should definitely keep track of this. But essentially, you'd have like stages where you can kind of look at where the customer is. So you have a kickoff. So this is like literally when they first like purchase, basically in progress. So essentially, the deliverables are being delivered, but they're still in progress. Review and done. So essentially, once everything is complete, you'd review it, make sure everything's good, and then once it's sent out and still it's actually delivered, it'll just be done in that case. Standard SOPs and templates. So basically, standard operating procedures. So basically, things you always do to basically actually, I don't even know why I put standard right here, because it's just an abbreviation. But essentially, things that you do for every single like step of the actual process. So this can apply to pretty much everything. Like for example, your standard operating procedure in the morning could be like check your emails, check your text, and then maybe just go to the bathrooms to brush your teeth. That's an example of a standard operating procedure. But in the terms of business, it could be as soon as somebody purchases, right here, a standard operating procedure would be like sending them a thank you message and then sending them a thank you email with all the deliverables and stuff like that. Then you have QC, so basically quality control before delivery. So essentially making sure that everything is pretty much looking all good before you actually deliver the actual service or product or deal. And then KPIs would be on-time delivery, how fast it's actually delivered, customer satisfaction score. So basically, you want to keep in contact with your customers all the time to see, how well they actually like the offer. And then churn/refund rate. This is very important as well. And referral rate. Referral rate is essentially the rate at which you get referrals. People are actually recommending your offer to other people, and also keeping track of how many people are actually referring you. So basically, you want to ask your customers, "Hey, look, where'd you guys hear about us?" And if you're getting a lot of people who are like, "Oh, this person referred me, this person referred me," you might actually want to consider a referral program where people are further incentivized to actually refer you new business. Then we have the last section right here, ongoing operations. So these are just things to keep in mind as you basically operate on a daily basis. So you want to keep a track, just like we talked about, traffic execution, basically keeping track of all your KPIs, lead follow-ups. So people who have you spoken to or they've given you a piece of their information, you want to basically be able to follow up with these people and convert them. Maybe they might have a longer sales process. And then you have fulfillment tasks. Right here would be essentially where people are, they purchased, but you want to make sure that the fulfillment is actually dialed in. They're actually getting what they actually purchased, like completely. Weekly, you'd review the KPIs, identify bottlenecks on whether it's the traffic bottlenecks, sales bottlenecks, fulfillment bottlenecks, and focus on the bottlenecks for the next week. So essentially making sure that you don't fall short on these bottlenecks and you're just addressing them. Last ones were if leads are less than the target KPI, some things you could do is basically potentially expand into new channels or increase volume. This can also just be a fluctuation that's completely normal. Things just fluctuate up and down. You might not hit your KPI all the time, but essentially these things could just be fluctuations and shouldn't be changed until assessed further and confirmed. So you don't want to just mess around with a bunch of things. You want to basically see it out, make sure that you actually 100% think that this is the problem, and then you go ahead and try to change things. If the close rate is less than the target KPI, you want to improve your sales framework, basically offer positioning, messaging, or lead qualification. And then you have if delivery slips. So this is the third section, delivery and fulfillment. If that slips, then you want to run a community/customer survey report. So basically getting an idea of kind of like where the sentiment is within your actual customer base and trying to just figure out how you can basically improve the delivery. You can adjust the expectations. Maybe you're over promising on what you're actually offering. That's another thing. So you'd adjust expectation until delivery improves. So basically making sure that you get that straight before actually maybe offering more, and then tightening the actual scope of the actual offer. So basically, if you're offering like three things, maybe you should actually like offer two things and then just return to three once you actually have the two things to actually dialed in. So these are all the things that make up the operations of every single business. We went through how a barbershop operates similar to an e-commerce brand, how an e-commerce brand operates similar to a whole entire syndication/fund manager, a real estate fund. So these are basically people who make billions of dollars, comparing that to barbershops and how a real estate fund operates similar to a software company. And it all goes back to these core principles right here: your offer, traffic, sales, and fulfillment. So this is basically the end of the video that I wanted to cover. Feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.